if at all they have to be involved in the electoral process? If they have both nationalities?
You know, I haven't had the opportunity to speak with government officials, and I wasn't in Washington when the delegation visited. But the surprising thing is that some of the Cameroonians who represent the ruling party out of the country fall in that category as well. You know, we should be honest with ourselves as a country. In the next few weeks, we'll be sending an international team, our national team, to represent us in South Africa. A lot of those Cameroonians playing on the national team are also playing for foreign clubs. We shouldn't become a country that puts laws in place and that by ourselves, by undertaking, implement them in a selective fashion. And so we say, okay, if you have double nationality and you're a soccer player, then we provide an avenue for you to contribute to the pride of the fatherland. But if you have double nationality and you're an economist, or you're a banker, or you're a private entrepreneur, we wouldn't create opportunities for you to invest some of that talent into the development of your own country. I just don't understand why the issue has not been addressed. But I hear that the government is thinking about it, and my hope is that they will move quickly to address it before we become the laughingstock of the continent.
You know, one of the fundamental questions around the issue of double nationality is that of the technical expertise for Cameroon to be able to manage the votes abroad. Do you think we can rely on the technical expertise and the honesty on the part of the government to be able to have that go really smoothly?
You know, probably because I've been involved around elections for the last 2 decades, I tend to see solutions, a lot more solutions than problems. And to say that for a country that has a government that runs the lives of 20 million Cameroonians, that somehow that government would not be able to manage an electoral process in Cameroonian embassies abroad, for me, it's not an excuse. It's not an explanation. Either as a government that is effective, that runs embassies abroad, we can put in place a system that can have Cameroonians abroad express their views and participate in the electoral process at our embassies abroad, or the government is inefficient and it comes out and says, I'm just not competent enough to run things overseas where we have less than 500,000 Cameroonians, and therefore you all can make judgments as to whether I can run the lives of 20 million Cameroonians living on the national territory. How have countries such as Benin and Mali and Senegal and Niger and Gabon and Ghana, how have they run those elections? And why couldn't we do the same that they have done?
You know, Doctor, we get to realize that paradoxically to this debate, you know, most Cameroonians prefer foreign nationalities instead, you know. How do you perceive this phenomenon?
I shed a lot of tears when I think about the preference that the Cameroonians, especially the Cameroonian youth, the younger generation, has come to express a preference to live outside of our fatherland. And I can understand that if young people grow up, they study hard, they go to universities, they graduate, and they have no jobs, that ultimately, especially in today's global village, when they watch television and see the internet, a lot of them are going to think that there's a brighter future outside of the country. And there again, I think the diaspora has an important role to play, because many Cameroonians in the diaspora are willing to invest themselves to create an environment in the country whereby the young people can have hope and opportunities, so that they won't feel compelled to travel out of the country to find greener pastures. And I think that everything should be done to capitalize on those opportunities that could be helped created, so that we can create a renewed sense of patriotism and of attachment to our fatherland. Because obviously, the Cameroonians in the diaspora are role models in their respective communities. People look up to them. They listen to what they say, because these people contribute with ideas, they contribute materially in development projects, but at a small scale. Now, if all of a sudden we create a relationship between Cameroon and its diaspora, that the younger Cameroonians growing up feel that their elders who may be outside of the country have a contribution that is being valued within the country, there would be a different kind of dialogue. And perhaps this diaspora could also help us get the message to younger Cameroonians that we can all still do well in our own country without risking everything to go find greener pastures elsewhere.
Away from the issue of double nationality of Cameroonians, let me take you to the French Africa Summit that took place in Nice,
yes.
31st of May 2010,
yes.
attended by 38 head of states and about 200 businessmen, yes. with a predominantly political and commercial agenda. Yes. How useful was the summit?
Well, I think it was a helpful improvement over previous France-Africa summits, and for three reasons, in my view. One is that it reinforced Sarkozy's statements about a desire to have a new kind of relationship between France and Africa. And you can find argument with what Sarkozy said thus far, but I would give it to him that the French president has been consistent in his public declarations about wanting to put an end to the whole concept of France and a backyard in Francophone Africa. He's been consistent. He's made some pretty bold declarations. Granted, declarations do not necessarily translate into realities, but he also is dealing with an inheritance which was much more toxic in terms of French-Africa relations than is the case today. And so he may have to walk a tightrope domestically, but at least we have to give it to him that he's consistent in his public declarations. And during this summit, he said again that he wants to put an end to the very insidious relationships that may have existed between France and Francophone Africa in the past. Secondly, that assertion on his part could be seen in the participation. I was delighted to see that there were a lot of heads of states from Africa who were not from Francophone countries. And interestingly, during the press conference at the end of the summit, there were 5 heads of states at the podium. There was President Sarkozy, President Biya, and those were the only 2 Francophones. But there were 3 Anglophones, President Zuma of South Africa, the Prime Minister Melis of Ethiopia, and the current president of current chairman of the African Union, the president of Malawi. And for me, there was a very strong statement in that the French, as hosts, are beginning to see a new image of Africa, and are beginning to see that these artificial boundaries that divvy up Africa, that divide Africa along linguistic lines, which are very artificial, don't really mean anything in the world of the 21st century. And I think that's a very positive message.